And we're actually going to need you to do two things, actually maybe three. If you haven't signed into your calculators, please go through and do so. Let's go, please. Pens and pencils should be down. Let's hand up our assessments. You should have out maybe two extra things. Have out, please, your note packet. Make sure you've signed into your calculators. And the last thing that we're going to ask you guys to go through and do, have out however you check your grades. I know some of you do it by the app, and some of you go through and use the website. So whichever way you need to, go through and do that now. Have out whichever way, some browser window, or if you use it on a browser on your phone, that's fine. I don't care. I just need you to log in because I wanted to show you something that I'll try to do to get information back to you as quickly as we can, especially once everybody's already got the assignment in. If you go in and look, I input, I think, about 5, maybe 4 or 5 of your assignments today. I went through and input also your Math XLs. You guys had your Math XL that ended last night, and then you had your orientation one. When you go through and log in, it'll show you that both of those are in there. I think the orientation one I only counted once, but the one that was your weekly assignment, I think I counted that one. It has a multiplier on it. Is anybody logged in and can see what it says Math XL A?
Math XL A?
That's
a multiplier of 2.
Okay, so that meant it's 10 points, or that score that you had twice. I know that they take a little bit longer. That's why I gave you that as your, I weighted a little bit more. You can see your different categories also. So understand, as it stands right now, you're obviously going to have a ton of fluctuation because we only have, even now, it'll stop varying as much because, like, how many assessment grades do you have in, like 4 or 5? 7, okay? So some of them, you'll see what's in there, but I wanted to see the best way of making sure you can see if you didn't do well, what needed to get done. I tried this. Take a look at what's next to, is it assessment 5? Where did I put that thing on? There should be a comment.
Assessment 5 is a little like answers, and there should be like a little like link.
Yeah, Google shortened link.
Really
So what you want to go through and do, if you need to handwrite it down, I thought it might show up as a hyperlink. You might want to handwrite it down if you're looking for the answers, or if you're on a computer, you can just hover over and cut and paste. I think you can do that on the phone too, but I don't know how everyone's phones work. You just can't do it on the app. Okay, so if you write it down someplace, though, you can go through and type that in. If you go through and get that link and drag it over, you'll see on there what happens when you go through and use that Google shortened link and drag it in. It's, look at, which one was it, assessment 5?
Assessment 5, it's like...
You see where it says, so, go to the one for the course. How did you get that
So
stuff?
once you get to, like, you have like all the columns by your grades, click geometry, and then it should show you like assessments from course.
Yeah, there you go. So if that was different, some of you might not have seen it. What did you click to see that? Was that the most recent grades or something? Okay. And now when you do that, if you click under, who's seeing the link on that right-hand side? Yeah, is it under a comment? Is that what it's under? Yes. Okay. So when you see something in there, that means you can take that answer. So if you want, highlight that link. I apologize. I actually emailed them to find out if there's a way to have them format a link. I'll go through, and this is what we'll have going forward. Very frequently, I'll just take, hey, this person got a perfect paper. They illustrated their work well. I cover up the name so you can't tell who it is. We post it up there. Take a look at what's there. Did you show that much work? Did you go through, is that how you approach the question? One thing that you've got to understand, all of us show different amounts of things. That's not what I'm getting at. Minimally, though, you should have those steps there. Is there a quad there? Did you show me an equation equal? Something like that. And even if there's one on there, like that last question, that it really was the only enriched level one out of those 3, you'd have to go back and say, oh, this is why it worked out. And you can see some of you got to it, but then you got a roadblock somewhere, or maybe you struggled with solving out the quad. But now you've got one there, and you'll have one for every assignment. The only problem is, I don't like putting, some of you who are actually enriched will see why. You're so bright in just a minute. I don't like putting the link up if not everyone has taken the assessment. Can anybody gather why I would be so apprehensive to throw the answers up in your grade book before everyone's taken it? There you go. Or the person who hasn't taken it can just say, I've got a missing assignment in there, and then on the right it'll say answers, click here. Some of you are pretty sharp knives and can go through and figure out, hey, if this guy's dumb enough to post it, I should be smart enough to take advantage of it. So if you ever get stuck, though, and want that there, I think everybody, by the way, has taken the quiz as well. If we have, I'll post that up. Also, I know that the answers and stuff are in there. By and large, I think the class average in here was an 88 for everybody, which was pretty good. Yeah. So as we go through, I think we had 3 16 out of 16s. I think we had 2 15 out of 16s. A lot of people were in the 12 to 14 out of 16, which again, some of you maybe need to recalibrate your expectations slightly. It's going to be tough. This is not, we're not handing out grades like they do candy. You've got to do the work, to get it done. The fluff grades that you should get are those Math Excel grades, and looking at what was there, I think everybody got 100 on the orientation, and I think the lowest grades that we had for those of us who did the assignment were, I want to say, I think the lowest one that I had that was done was like an 89 or a 90 or something like that. So if you go and you get your Math Excel assignments done, they're designed to be fluffs on your grades as well. So make sure that you're not a stranger to what your grade is. Monitor it. The other thing is, though, don't become a hostage to it. Understand that no one is able to tell the difference from standing and talking at you we'll put it to you this way. It's almost impossible for a teacher to identify the difference between two students if there's a 10-point gap. 10. It's very difficult, almost impossible, to figure out a 5-point difference. Don't become a slave to your grade. Some of you sit there and you become paralyzed by it. It holds you hostage. That's nuts. You focus on your learning. The grade sorts itself out over time. You've got 7 assignments in. You've got another one coming today. Your Math Excel isn't active today. It will be active tomorrow, and it closes because we have that holiday weekend. I think it closes off. I'll end it on Monday at midnight because when you have off Friday and Monday, is that right? Yeah. So we'll end it on Monday at midnight to give yourself the extra day. If you went through and did your Math Excel work, I think I checked the average logged in time because it shows me when your last login was and how long it took to get the assignment done. It took, on average, the average student to go through and finish that, it took them 57 minutes. So that's a reasonable amount of time. That's 1 hour's worth of work. They prompt you through the questions. Who used the extra help buttons or any of those commands during it? Were they helpful? Yeah. Yeah. If you click on...
one of your tries.
Right. Well, wait. Which one was it? Was it...
I don't know. I just was like question help and it was saying it was like an automatic X.
No, so if you go through, hang on. So when you go through, there's 2 options. You'll have one is view an example, and one was help me solve this. If I always disable one of the 2, so I think if that's what happened, the help me solve this was on there. If you do the help me solve this, it literally solves out the equation you were just looking at, and then generates a new one, right? So that's the help me solve this. Sometimes you'll see one that says view an example, and if you say view an example, it goes in and says, hey, your question is 2x plus 5 equals 4. This one is 6x plus 5 equals 4, and this is how you solve this one. Now go solve your old one. So it's up to you, though. Make sure you're getting those guys done. Those are your fluff grades for what we do. Make sure, I think we left off, double check. We should be at or around day 12 stuff, which, what page does that put us at? So go to 47 in your note packets, and you should have a page, drag this down. You've got a page up there that looks like this. So I don't know what work you've done with parallel lines and transversals before, so we're going to assume that you have done nothing. I don't know. Raise your hand if you've heard parallel lines before. All right, so hands up, please, and if you can tell me one thing that you know. If I tell you, in this case, my picture, I could say line L and line M are parallel. What does that mean? They never intersect. However, line T intersects both of them. We're going to name line T something special. We would say, in this case, line T is our transversal. And based off of what you've got, let's make sure our notation is good. Looking at that picture, which two lines did we say were going to be parallel? Take a look at what's there. What's the name of the two lines that we said were going to be parallel? Take a look at what's there. Not here. Bad pick. Gotta pick the work. Here, which two lines are parallel? What's the name of our two parallel lines? What did we say? So if I were to go through and indicate that to you as like a given statement, you could go through to begin with and say line L is parallel to line M. You should be using cursive to indicate that's how we know that you're talking about these specific. So if you're a printer, you have to adjust slightly, but you have to make the same letters that we use. Line L and M are parallel. Now, this is a piece where we might be taking it beyond what you've done. Again, I'm assuming you've done nothing. Looking at what's there, corresponding angles. First of all, I'll tell you from looking at my picture, angle 1 and angle 5 would be corresponding angles. If I told you angle 1 and angle 5 were corresponding angles, who can tell me what they think corresponding angles means? If I told you angle 1 and angle 5 were corresponding, what do you think that means for us? They're going to be congruent. That's our first step. So I'd make sure you knew that corresponding angles are going to be congruent. How would you define them? What do you think it means to be, if I told you two angles were corresponding? Yeah, if I were to take that cluster of 4 angles and plop it on top of the second cluster, one would be corresponding or fall on top of 5. Who can give me another set of corresponding angles? Make sure you give your angle symbol in front of each. What's another set? Go ahead. 3 and 7 are corresponding. Who can give me another set? She's right. Yep. 2 would fall on 6, and our last one? There you go. So let's make sure we list out all of those pairs. Make sure you put your angle sign in front of each one. And we know that they are equal to each other. They have the same value. Alternate interior angles. Now, we try to spell this out for you as clearly as we can. Alternate means switch. Interior means inside. So let's look at the inside of our two angles. Who can give me a guess as to what two angles would be alternate interior angles? Give me what you think a pair of alternate interior angles may be based off of your understanding of the English language, the word alternate and interior. 3 and 6 are alternate interiors. What else? 5 and 4 are. And what do we know about alternate interior angles? Take a look at 3 and 6 and 4 and 5. What conjecture can we make about their values? They're congruent. So I'd state off alternate interior angles. We know that those are congruent. We stated out what the pairs were, 4 and 5, and the other ones were 3 and 6. How about alternate exterior angles? Taking a look at what's there. Careful. It wouldn't be 2 and 6. 2 and 6 are corresponding. Why couldn't it be 6, though? Which one, if you're at 2, which one do you think is exterior on the other side? We can't use, we got 2. Which one do you want to say? 7. 2 and 7 match up. And then the other pair that would match up, hands up please if you can tell me what our other pair would be. 1 and 8, that's great. And we can say that those are congruent to each other. Now, we really got a tough one here. Same side interior angles. You can tell me a pair, I guess, that would be same side interior angles. Literally, it's your ability. And eyes on 3 and 5, sure. And we could also say on the other side, 4 and 6. Look at those angles, though. This is the first time we're going to answer this differently. How would you fill in what we know about same side interior angles? What conjecture, what do you think is happening there? They're supplementary, which means they add to 180. You could be referring to them even as a linear pair. What do I know about angle 1 and angle 4? Take a look at angle 1 and angle 4. Because angle 1 and 4 relate to each other, but not in a way that requires us to know that there's parallel lines. Angle 1 and angle 4, how do they relate to each other? What type of relationship exists between angle 1 and angle 4? What would you like to say? How do you know they're congruent? What type of angles will 1 and 4 be? He's absolutely right that they're congruent. Who remembers your reasoning? They're vertical, which means they're across from each other. And by the way, what kind of angles are 2 and 4? Take a look there, or you could say the same thing about 1 and 2. You could say it about 1 and 3. What type of angles are, let's do it 1 and 2. What type of angles are 1 and 2? There's a couple of different explanations you could give. What's one relationship that exists between angle 1 and angle 2? What do you want to say? They're supplementary, that's fine. What else could we say about angle 1 and 2? We know they're a supplementary pair. There's another word that you could use there. They're equal to 180. Linear pairs. Because they're right next to each other, and since the two of them form line L, then we know that that's what we would go through and have, that they're a linear pair. Do we have questions on that? All right. As we go through and do these, we've got to use this diagram. We've got lines S and R, they're parallel. That's my transversal. Hopefully we should be able to fill in a bunch. Hands up, please, if you can tell me any angle in there that you would want to go through and label. Johnny? Any angle you want, you get to pick. Look at that. A and C are both 150. Lord, which one do you want to go through and give? What's angle B? Luke, which one do you want to give? Ben? G would be Taylor? We got that now. E would be 30. And Cam would just say for D. For D, there's literally only two options when you've got these. Two angles are either going to be equal to each other, or our two angles are going to be. That's it. There's only so many ways we can ask these questions. So we know what all those are. Now, based off of what you've got, read what's there, please. Label appropriately and solve out, or at least begin the equation solve we would need in 1. Take a look at what's there. What would you want to do What equation would you want to set up in the beginning? You've got these two angles here. What would you want to go through and list out, or what relationship, I guess, exists between them? No? Has to equal how much? Yeah, what kind of angles do you have right here? What's the name of it? Do you see? Nope. Take a look. Up above. How do they relate? Because of being two lines cut by a transversal, how does that angle, those two, I guess, highlighted ones, how do they relate to each other? Are they corresponding to each other? No. What was the second one that we listed? There you go. Alternate interior. So how do alternate interior angles relate to each other? Yep. So what equation would you write out? There you go. Here's my equation. Now, when we go through and do that all the way out, who got, please, what our x value should be? Now, it didn't want any more, right? If you could stop there, it didn't want the individual. Yeah. How about for the next one? Go in right now, read what's there. Label appropriately. Trace over the three-letter angle. Go from one, the two outside letters are sort of at the ends. The middle is your pivot point. So trace from E to G to B and so on, and label. And then determine what equation you would need and so on. Take a look at what's there. We've done our labeling. And Steph, how do these two labeled angles compare to each other?
They're equal to each other
Why?
because they both.
What's our word?
They're both like interior angles, but they're. No, this one's not.
Hang on. What do you want to say? Why are they corresponding?
Because I looked up at the.
Yeah, take a look up top. See that angle that we labeled? If we cut it and put it down on the other set, they fall on top of each other. And if that's the case, Steph, what do you know about these two angles? What relationship exists between the two?
They're congruent.
They're congruent. So how does that relate to how we would solve for x?
3x plus 20 equals 2x plus 40.
So we go through, solve this out. Hands up, please, when you can tell me what answer do we get for our x value. And I don't think we needed to go beyond that and plug back in. If you did, you could go through, I think each one of them is 80. You could find the rest of them. Next one up there, go through and label out for 3.
We can get both of those questions answered. So we get to hear what relationship exists, I guess, what equation, Alex, would you go through and give for these? After we go through and label, what relationship, I guess, exists between them? They're supplementary. So how would you solve for the x? What would you have to do? Yeah, I go through and make sure I had my equation down to here. Did you get what the x came out to be? Equals 180, yes. Did you get what your x came out to be? Who's got what the answer to this is? What do we get as a result of our solve? Go ahead. 18. Do we have questions on that? That are around like that? Now, why would BEF be congruent? So let me, So why would angle BEF, so as I trace it down, this one here, and then the other one was DFH. Why would those two angles be congruent? Use your words and make sure you're using geometry appropriate language. Since those two angles, we know that you have congruent corresponding angles. If two lines are parallel and cut by some transversal, that gives you two corresponding. Is that tough? Now, this next one is going to be, I'll say, maybe tough-ish. Go through right now. See if you can get to the point where you can give me out an equation, and then we'll work on the solve together, perhaps. Get yourself set up, though. Look at what's there, see how these compare to each other, and so on. Start labeling. So we're going to label. We've got to make sure we're tracing the right stuff. So that in the wrong spot. That doesn't go there. It goes to here. Okay? So that's 2x plus. That's why. But they're on the same side. Okay? Now, it's not necessarily easy for us right away to see how angle 1 compares to angle 2, but we can use some of our properties. We know right away, I guess, if you want to label it out. What was angle 2? Was it x squared minus 2? Minus 2x, sorry. And we know this angle 1 is 2x squared minus 10x. So those don't immediately relate to each other. At least not in an obvious way. Does anybody see how I could get something, or how we could show an interplay or relationship there? Yeah?
So angle 2 and angle across from it are equivalent.
So this let's label also then is x squared minus 2x. And now that you know that, how did that help you? Because you're right that we can do that. Why did it help?
So both those angles together would have.
So what equation would you go through and write out? By the way, what's the relationship, I guess, between these two that I just labeled equivalent? What type of angles are they? Hands up, please, if you can tell me. Use your words. What type of angles are those two that I labeled x squared minus 2x? We got one person who can tell me that? Yeah. Not these two. Not these two right here.
vertical angles, and we know vertical angles are congruent. The ones next to it over here, these are that supplementary interior pair. The equation I go through and give out starts to look like that. What do we do now from here? JD, what would your next step be? So what's that going to be? What do we go through and do after we've done that? Huh? You're gonna. This is the part where, in the beginning especially, it's, so I don't know how much they spend on this with you in Algebra 1, but this should be automatic. What type of equation? We got answers before I even finish the question. What type of equation do I currently have listed on my paper? What has the algebra brought us to as of now? Quadratic. How many answers should our equation or should our algebra give us when you're dealing with the quad? 2. Now, the next step is probably one of the most important because we forget this once we get here. It's quadratic. That tells you what to do next. Yeah. Quads get set equal to 0, and then we figure out how to proceed. So I bring this over, except now it looks like it's going to be a really awkward quadratic to solve. You've got 3x squared minus 12x minus 180 equals 0. I don't know if they did this with you. It sounds like 3 or 4 of you have got a really good lead, and that's outstanding. If you know what to do from here. Now, that's absolutely right. Look at what's there. And this, if they didn't show it to you before, I'm sorry, but you need to be at this level if you're not. Look at all of that quad. You got 3x squared minus 12x minus 180. Now, she said, I see a GCF, and she's right, except when we go through and list it out. Normally, we'd say you factor out a GCF. This is an equation, though. What is the GCF, by the way, you saw? 3. If I go through, I can either factor out a 3, or I can go through. Does everybody know what else I can do? You could factor it out. It's not going to lose an answer. You're not going to change. It's still quadratic. Let's divide both sides by 3. The reason we say both sides is maybe you're not getting that piece, but if you do one to one, you do to the other. And even though you're dividing by 3, are you changing the right-hand side at all? No. What do you now have, though, on the left? Take a look at what's there. And Aaron, what would you have if you divided each of those coefficients by 3? What would your new equation be? Now, we get to that point. And again, some of us either, it's very easy to shut down and go, oh, I don't know what to do. Of course you're not going to do, especially if you don't know, if you get stuck and then you sit there and go, I can't do anything. Of course you can. We need to find values that multiply to 60 and add to 4. Sorry, multiply to negative 60, add to negative 4. If you don't know, some of you, we vacantly stare off to the left or to the right and pray that your card's not the one that gets picked. You've got a calculator in front of you that can go in right now and figure out what they are. It's not that tough. Thoughts and prayers are wonderful, but they're not going to tell you what those numbers are. So if you don't know, you find numbers that multiply to 60. Then go through, all right, 60 divided by this. Hey, those two give me the 4 that I need. And by the way, when I ask you what the factors are, don't tell me a number. You're going to tell me an expression, and you're going to tell me 2 of them. We got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Here's what we'll do to make it even better, because for some reason it seems to be we're having a big block. So, did we sign in? Look at that. We can't even go through. Sign in if you haven't already. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to get and do what we're doing. Mm-hmm. When you come in, you log in, you hit the 5, it gets you there. We've got 20 of us out of the 26 total who are going to be able to answer. If you didn't get signed in, you're not going to be able to. So go in right now, 21 of us. I think if you log in, maybe it'll be waiting for you if it's still active. I'm not sure. Go in, put in the two binomials, not numbers, binomials, which means parentheses, parentheses. Fill those parentheses in. We've got 4 of us, 5. Type in what those two binomial factors are that we're looking for this quadratic. If you want to submit it at the end, if you click on this drop down there, you put your hover over, you need to move your finger on the directional pad to get to that cursor at the top. We'll go in, type in what those are. We've got 15 of us. This is a low-level factoring question. We went through already, and 30 of you answering is not going to help. If you go through, and you don't even need to worry about submitting, as long as you type it in, you're good. If you need to submit it, if you hit on that drop down, it'll go through and do it. Now, we've got 21 of us. Lucas, out of the 21, how many do you think got it right? Out of the 21 answers I'm going to look at in a minute, how many do you think got it?
At
Least 10. Not bad. I was going to say 5. Look at that. Not bad. Not bad. If we're going through, we need numbers that multiply up. Some of us have this condition where we need to comment on literally everything. We don't. That's a very middle school thing. We get to here. Now, this person, by the way, this final answer down here, I'd even say is correct also, because they factored the 3 out in the beginning. They're not wrong. You could have done that also. These answers over here, this was a sign mistake. This one was probably they just hit the wrong button. That's fine. And the other one we had just wrong values. It happens. When we get to here, this factors down, and it factors down pretty easily. Most of us are to that point. What happens now once you've gone through and you've done your factoring? We've got 1. What's your next step going to be? How do you work towards your answers? What happens next? Got to pay attention. Johnny? Now, you've got to show, and this, they might not have explained to you, this step is not optional. He skipped one thing, one little thing, and I think I told you, but if I didn't, I apologize. This needs to be there, though, on all your papers, if it's not. Kind of, what do you need to show?
So, like, shows that when you set it x equal to 0, that the negative 10 turns into positive 10, and then...
You need to show 2 equations. You actually set each of the factors to be equal to 0. So that, I don't know if it's referencing the same thing, but this is what needs to be on your papers. This right, this was minus 10 over here, so we changed this. Here and here. So this was minus 10, so the answer here is 10. Yeah, so we got those 2 values. That's the piece that needs to be shown. Show the individual factors to be equal to 0. Now, which one do we go back and use? Or which one is the X? I'm going to tell you this. I don't know if someone told you before, like that there's some shortcut to figuring out what works or doesn't. There's not one that exists ever. So before you lock in on any answer, plug the value or values back in. If you went through, you've got values of, what were they, 2x squared minus 10x. I'll show you right now the easiest way to go in and figure out whether or not these will work. Because you need to figure out what the angle 1 was, the one that was 2x squared, it's minus 10x, and the other angle was x squared minus 2x. You need to see, it very well could work out that they both work. Stop thinking you reject something that's not a thing. Go in if you need it. Go over right now, and this will be for all of us. This is probably something new that they have not shown before. Another thing that I see a lot of you doing that is not going to be something that we do after today, stop working in Scratchpad. We don't use it ever. I don't know if they taught me the difference before or not. We'll go through and do one right now as a group, and I'll show you a little bit of a gimmick to make this work out nicely. First thing that you're going to go in and do is get yourself a new document. Get a new one, and this is for all of us. Go in, get yourself a brand new document for one. Now, Go and press 1. Now, you're going to add a calculator to that document. So hit enter here. And I like to, if you're not with us, we can put your names on these. Get yourselves to a brand new work screen. Now, what was our first angle? Was it x squared minus 10x or plus 10x? Which one? Or was okay, so type that expression in, whatever it was for the first angle, the 2x squared one. No, you don't need parentheses there. Type it in exactly as it looks. No. Wasn't it x squared minus 10x? Look, you guys have the same questions in front of you. Look at, okay, so type that in, whichever that first angle was. Got to be a little bit smarter here. We got 2x squared minus 10x. Type that in. Now, once that's in, don't hit enter. You're going to plug something in. So do Control and then the equal sign. Press Control and then the equal sign. Equal sign's literally the button right under Control. No, delete that. Hit Control and then the equal sign. Now, you're going to need to select the bar. So go over and pick the bar that's there. And now we're going to plug our value in. So our first answer, was our first answer 10 or negative 10? 10, so type in x equals 10. And hit enter. Now, go in and type in what our second angle was. Whatever expression that was. That was the one that was x squared or something like that. X squared minus 2x. Do x squared minus 2x. Put your bar there. And let's plug in a 10. Do x equals 10. Now, what did we say? X equals 10. Buttons on go. Boom. Enter. Now, what did we say exists between those two angles? What relationship exists between those two angles? What one did we say? They're supplementary. Are these two angles supplementary? Yes, and they're not negative, so this works out. You still, though, have another option. Arrow back up to the top one that you did. So use the up arrow until it's highlighted in blue. Hit enter on that. And now you need to plug in, was our other answer a -5 or -6? Try it with the -6. So delete the 10 that's there. So just hit backspace. There you go. Now type in a -6 and hit enter. 132. Now let's see, go up and pick the other angle, which was the x squared, right? So hit enter on that. Oh, you may need to arrow down and refine it. Delete the 10, replace it with a -6. Hit enter. Does the -6 work? Stop thinking that there's any rejections until you check them. If you do that, you will not get any credit for your right work. That's how catastrophic and lazy of a mistake that is. Always plug in your answers. Sometimes you have some people, they might be not the sharpest knives, who tell you, well, the negatives can't work or whatever it ends up being. They're wrong, completely and utterly wrong. Here's an example of exactly why they're wrong. Some of you look for gimmicks or whatever it is. It's a waste of time. Oh, this happens here. That's great. Congratulations. It works on this one question because that number's a 4 and that one's a 2. We're never doing the example again. Test every one of them. Okay? That's how good we should be. And by the way, watch how quick. Take a look over here. Can we figure out what's going on from here? Absolutely. You know X is 52. These are parallel lines. Now, your homework for tonight.
49:50.
I'm going to send you out your answer key. Make sure you know how to do them. Make sure we know them inside and out. Okay? So go through, please. Have a great rest of your day. The homework on the front to the side. Make sure, guys, your calcs get put back, please. John, I'll give you that. Oh, John. Oh.